The Tucson Roadrunners whiteout finally returned to Tucson for the first time in about 6 years, but it was outshined by Dustin Wolf and the Calgary Wranglers. We'll talk about that on today's episode of Locked On Coyotes.
You're Locked On Coyotes, your daily podcast on the Arizona Coyotes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the show, everybody. This is Locked On Coyotes, #1 daily podcast on the Arizona Coyotes. Today's episode brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and it is a big fan of Monopoly Go. The mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. Join your friends, download Monopoly Go for free on Apple or Google Play. I'm your host, Robyn Leano, alongside James Mackey from Inside the Rink, and we got Chase Beardsley from the Hockey Writers. We are all recording to you guys live from the Tucson Convention Center Arena after Game 1 of the Tucson Roadrunners versus Calgary Wranglers in the first round of the Calder Cup playoffs, guys. Unfortunately, it didn't go how a lot of us hoped it would.
Yeah, unfortunately is a good term for it. Tucson 0 for 5 on the power play. Calgary's power play just about the same. And really, ultimately, the problem kind of arose that Calgary controlled this game at both ends, really. I mean, Dustin Wolf pitching a shutout. We kind of had a feeling this would be the case. We knew Wolf and Villalta were probably the two top goaltenders in the AHL this season. But to see Wolf in person today, knowing what he is and what he was, I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous that he did what he did, was able to pitch a shutout, but they live to see another day. They have Friday still to try and win it and get it back even and push this to Sunday if they can. But if not, we're going to have a different conversation on our hands, that's for sure.
Yeah, James, you took the words right out of my mouth. Obviously, Dustin Wolf, the big story of the day, pitched the shutout. Magnificent, 46 saves. It was incredible performance by him. I think it's one of the most dominant performances we've seen in the AHL this year. 1-0 game, it shows. And I think another thing that I'm sure we'll mention soon is that the Roadrunners stars failed to perform. They failed to show up. You know, we were all hyped about Josh Stone, Connor Geekie, Akuratu, performing in the playoffs. And ultimately, I thought Dylan Gunther was the only one that really had a great performance tonight. It was disappointing, especially with the young talent this team has.
Yeah, Chase, you and I were talking about that in our press seating area and about all that, and I was like, it's bad when those players who were touted as the injection into this roster, who's supposed to be to make this team significantly better, they were invisible. I barely even noticed them. Some of them you did. Like Connor Geekie made several mistakes trying to get too cute with several getting inside the slot or whatever it might be, which when it comes to professional playoff hockey, this is the first time he's getting that experience, it's just something you just cannot do. And junior, sure, when it comes to professional hockey, you just can't go with that.
No, absolutely. I think, this was his first pro game. This was his first game in the AHL. Of course, there's going to be mistakes. I don't think it was the main cost of the game, but it was unfortunate, obviously, seeing him, try those things that probably you can pull off with the Swift Current Broncos, but not with the Tucson Roadrunners. This is a more physical league. This is a more, you got to get shots on net, first off. And, the Roadrunners did, but ultimately, like we said, Dustin Wolf was just killed.
James, anything to add?
It's tough to kind of look at it from any angle other than that, really. I mean, Geekie shows up to the show and he kind of knows that he's somebody they're going to want to perform today. But unfortunately, it just so happened that physicality was the name of the game. And Potvin said it in his post-game press conference. He said, we wasted energy in those scrums. Calgary controlled the physicality all the way up and down the ice. The body was being laid left and right. There were a couple times I saw Koch on the ground, and there were a couple times a couple reverse hits happened. It just ultimately kind of felt like there was a size mismatch, not necessarily a skill mismatch, just a definite size mismatch for the Roadrunners tonight.
I think adding on top of that, James, real quick, I think there's a lot of things that you could point to. And, I guess, blame. You can have excuses. Josh Dunn hasn't played in 2 weeks. Dylan Gunther hasn't played in 2 weeks. Connor Geekie hasn't even played an AHL game. Again, we can pile excuses and excuses on top, but ultimately, next game, there's no excuses.
No, there definitely is no excuses because you have both these teams now. Remember, they have that. It's now back in their systems. Like, oh yeah, this is how this system specifically plays. I've got my legs back underneath for American Hockey League style of play. Let's get it done.
Yeah, it's not that there's a significant skill depletion or decrease from what they faced in the NHL.
Right.
What it is, they went on a Canadian road trip. I'm pretty sure they played Calgary on that road trip. So Doan and Gunther, I know Gunther at least played Wolf once this season in his long year with the Yotes. Doan knew how to solve Dustin Wolf if necessary, right? But it comes down to it was a team effort ultimately altogether. You look for that charge from those guys who spent all that time up with the big team. But at the end of the day, they're not the only ones who are expecting to perform, especially because we know this roster to be so potent offensively, talent-wise, skill-wise. We know they can be great. It's just proof of that Calgary came in today a little bit more ready to play than what Tucson was probably expecting.
I think on top of that, James, I think people really underrated Calgary because they were a really low seed. Look, I mean, they had a lot of their players up in the Calgary Flames organization. They had Dustin Wolf up there for a while. They had Matt Coronado. They had Pellinger up there too. Peltier. They had Peltier up there as well. I mean, all these stars that, similar to the Coyotes, they had them up there. And I think, a lot of people saw Doan and all these guys coming down for the Roadrunners and really didn't see what the Wranglers had on their team as well. Peltier had a good game. I thought, obviously, Wolf had a great game. All of these guys had really good games. And ultimately, it kind of showed how maybe underrated Calgary came into this game.
Yeah,
I think you're 100% right. Yeah. Go ahead,
probably
James.
You're good. Probably two of the brightest futures in the league. I mean, let's call it what it is. You have a team in the Wranglers who, have skill all the way up and down. And we talked about it, Chase, you and I did on the way down here. This is a team that you just throw Dustin Wolf between the pipes with a little bit of defensive help. You're going to see a significant increase in his play level at the NHL level. You're going to see a significant increase, I think, personally, in the way that the Flames kind of fare when it comes to division and ultimately their conference.
Yeah, I think they definitely do have some of the brightest futures in the league. I wouldn't say one or two or anything, but I think, these are some really big players that are going to be stars one day. And I think a lot of people underrated that on the Calgary side.
And in just a sec, I do want to revisit the discussion about Dustin Wolf, talk about today's game, as well as talk about what we can try to see, we can hope that the Tucson Roadrunners team can do against Dustin Wolf for the rest of the series. We'll do that, though, right after this. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. We've all been there, either as a player or as a fan. It's halftime and the scoreboard is not looking good. You're feeling low, not sure about you or your team can pull out a win. That's when you dig deep, lift your head up, and say to yourself, it's time to get back in the game. Time to pull off some bank heists and take as many of my friends' money as I possibly can. That's right, the smash hit mobile game Monopoly Go lets you compete against friends to get the most riches in the biggest empire. It's Monopoly you love, but on your phone anytime with tons of new twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress to your buddies. There's so much to do, including make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball and charge other players' rent on your iconic properties. You can even work with your friends to crack open community chests and in tournaments to get extra rewards and climb the leaderboard. So get back out there and put on your game face. Download Monopoly Go now, free on App Store or on Google Play.
I think James and I are about to play Monopoly Go on our ride home, our 2 hour ride home.
I definitely know I was about to pull out my phone and download Monopoly Go. Actually, I was like, I need to do this. I'm just gonna do that off camera if you don't mind.
Hey, yeah, about 2 hour drive, it really makes a difference, right?
It does. It goes by faster.
2 hours straight shot too.
But let's continue this conversation. We started off a really good conversation about Dustin Wolf, and I want to revisit that because, and you guys said it right, 46 shots on this dude doesn't let a single one pass, including several many high danger chances that very well should have been a Tucson goal. You can even hear the fans. They just gasp. They just cannot believe what they just saw.
Yeah, and I, pardon me, I'm sorry, the car behind you freaked
The
me out to
Zamboni?
no avail. Oh my goodness. No, I think a 46 save shutout, what better way to make your staple back in the AHL than saying, hey, remember me? The Wolf Wall stands tall. I tweeted that, and I personally believe that should be his new nickname. Hashtag Wolf Wall, if you agree with me on Twitter.
The
Just
Wolf
kidding.
of Wall Street?
The Wolf of, oh, that's a good one, actually.
Ooh.
The Wall of Wolf Street would be a good one, too. We never
There
know.
we
The bottom line is Dustin Wolf stood tall. He didn't really have tremendous defensive support in the final minutes of this game. I talked about that, waiting for post-game press conferences, and I'll get back to it. But his defensive support all the way up and down the line tonight was amazing. But it's just proof that you have to have a full team effort to win a hockey game. And it shows that, again, Wolf may not have been what, Calgary was expecting. No coach expects their goalie to pitch a shutout. That's not what's going to happen all the time. But
right.
when you have a contender who can do that in a big situation, game one of a best-of-3 series, it's huge. And you have to hope that you can continue that momentum into two. And then if you have to play a third, capitalize on the fact that you've already been in that tie series situation. It's one game, winner take all, and hopefully they're able to do that if needed.
Look, I'll say this. First off, shout out Dustin Wolf, former junior Shark. And I'll also say this. I got to see Dustin Wolf with the Stockton Heat a couple years back, where he was literally the reason why they went all the way to the Western Conference Finals and went, I believe it was 6 games against the Chicago Wolves in that series. He was impressive, and it seems like we're going to get potentially another playoff series like that, where he is the sole reason why his team moves on and keeps moving on. I'll say this. I did not like the Roadrunners. A lot of their shots. A lot of their shots were weak shots from near the blue line, near the top of the faceoff circle. Not a lot of net front presence until, maybe the third period. There were some, but it was rare. They need more guys in front of the net to tap in those rebounds, because he did let in a lot of rebounds that Calgary easily cleared out. And I think that's something the Roadrunners need to really really get on that. That's the way to beat Wolf. You have to put shots in them, and they can't be easy shots from the blue line. They can't be easy shots from the top of the faceoff circle. He's too good for that. His glove is great. His glove hand's great. He's great with every single position. I would just say, like every goaltender, he can't save every single rebound. You got to get guys in front of the net. And, James mentioned the power play earlier. You have the man advantage. Get them to the front of the net. Get as many shots as you can. Get all the rebounds as you can. And honestly, I thought the Roadrunners really failed in that tonight.
There's a couple things I want to touch on what Chase said, and one of them is the big point of the game for me. Calgary's ability to take away the high percentage areas. They locked down the slot really well. They were taking away passing lanes, sacrificing the body. This is a team, like we talked about, skill, talent, shoot the puck, get it on net. You can't do that if you can't pass the puck across the zone. We heard a lot of click-clacking and a lot of puck hitting the tape perfectly when the Roadrunners were making passes. It just so happened that when they were inside their offensive blue line, Calgary was on top of their game. They knew what they had to do to stop the Tucson offensive. And Chase, you mentioned it, rebound control was a problem for Wolf tonight. It just was the fact that the defensive core for this Calgary team locked down the pushes to the net to prevent guys from getting to where they needed to be to get those rebounds. Second of all, I think we need to really take a second to talk about the power play on both sides in this game. That was something. We had 8 combined power plays in this game, and then you have man advantage up and down both sides. We had a 4-on-3 at one point, then we had a 6-on-5 to end the game. Calgary just was so strong and fast offensively. Their skill felt so potent that Tucson felt smushed in this one. They felt like they weren't here. They didn't even bother showing up today, and a lot of that is to the fact that, again, Calgary had a good goaltender to stand behind and stand in front of, and they knew he was going to protect them when they really needed it the most on those man disadvantages.
And you could see the frustration, too, in the Tucson Roadrunners. And it was talked about, and, one of the things in the post-game press conference, Steve Potvin was like, I kind of got a little bit too much, between the whistles, essentially. I'm paraphrasing him. But he said, definitely got to work on that. Focus on our game. Focus on the game, and rather than, what's going on between the whistles. And it should help them out a lot better. But it's a playoff game, and intensity is going to be high. You got to know what's going to be coming your way.
I was actually surprised by a lot of Potvins' coaching decisions today. I thought they were interesting and not normal. I think Potvins one of the greatest coaches in the AHL right now. He's a tremendous guy. Let's not get that wrong. But I barely saw Michael Kesselring out there. Jan Yannick, he looked injured. I'm not going to lie. We pointed it out, Robyn. Didn't look that great out there. Sam Lipkin not in the lineup. That was an interesting choice. I just thought there were a lot of questionable decisions within the line changes in the roster today. And I don't know, maybe there's something that we don't know. But I saw that and I'm like, I don't know, putting Doan and Gunther out there, those are your two best players. That line was freaking awesome before Gunther got called up. But, how many times can they almost put home the puck and not get any help from anyone else? Because it felt like, Gunther overall was the one player that showed up besides Matt Vialta.
And a lot of that could just be skill management, right? Let's take a second to talk about it. You put Connor Geekie, Josh Doan, and Dylan Gunther out on the line together. Hell, you put Jan Yannick out there with somebody that is able to move the puck around. You're going to lose a lot of that all the way up and down. You have 4 forward lines and 3 defensive lines you have to manage. Kesselring may not have seen his time on the ice. He did have a year in the NHL. Let's take a second to talk about it. He was great for the Coyotes when they needed him. He was a blue line presence. He was consistently starting for Andre Torini. It just felt as if tonight there was a slight talent mismanagement when it came to kind of some of the pairings. I think the first power play pair definitely could have been improved. You have Doan, you have Gunther, you have Yannick and Soderstrom out there, and then you have Kirkland out there. It just kind of feels as if you're missing some of that push that can really propel you past those blocked walls. And maybe if we see a little bit of a different mix up when it comes to Friday night's matchup here at the TCC, we could see a totally different outcome on special teams all the way around.
Yeah, and it's really interesting when that you say all that. It's just like trying to think where I was going exactly with that thought. I know I was going to go, but continue, Chase, if you have any other thought, and it'll come back to me.
I agree with James 100%. Again, I think this is Potvins' first time head coaching a playoff team.
Yes.
So, again, more excuses that, fine for game 1, but you need to win game 2. It's game 2, win or go home. And I don't know if we mentioned it yet, but it could be the last game in Tucson. It's a massive game to win, more than any other team that's on the brink of elimination.
And let's take a second real fast, touch on it. Robyn, you asked Potvin if he was a part. You said, if I recall, you were part of that team in 2018 that had a whiteout here. And you gave him an opportunity to tell you that being the big guy behind the bench was the reason why some of the mistakes were made. He didn't take that. He took accountability for what he feels really went wrong. He said this atmosphere was really similar to what happened in 2018. That's different when you're the guy calling the shots versus when you're supporting a guy calling the shots. Good on you, Steve Potvin.
Yeah, and that's an important thing to remember, because he certainly was a part of that. Like, think about it. He's been here for Steve Potvin's been here for 6 years. He knows the system that the Roadrunners are supposed to work, and with the talent that's put in there, it's what you hope to expect a significant injection, and you expect to see a higher level of play given all things put into place. And the thought I was going to get, it was getting back to me. The one thing that's my guest on yesterday's episode said that could be very well could be a concern is when you get a talent injection like that, and when you get these kind of players that return, like your Kesselring or your Gunther, who spent so much time with the Coyotes, that when they come back down, it just throws the entire chemistry out of whack because they haven't been there for so long. That you have to really work on that. Question is, were they focusing on that on line rushes going into the practice ahead of this? Because they weren't even in, they haven't played it for a while. It's been a week since they played a game.
I think you could definitely credit it to that. Sorry, Chase. You could definitely credit it to that. I think the big thing we need to look at too is when they're here, that's who they're counting on to be their producers. Let's call it what it is. You have guys that you send up to the show. you're looking at them when they come back and you're like, look, I need you to be my powerhouse. I need you to be the guy I can look at on the bench and say, hey, I need a goal. Go get it for me. When they're up with the Coyotes, that's not what they're supposed to be, right? When they're up with the Coyotes this year, their first year, they're supporting characters. I mean, when you have a Clayton Keller and Matthias Michelli to kind of carry your team forward, Nick Schmaltz when he has it turned on, when you send up that youth, you're just looking – that's a GM move. They're looking to try and get them some reps with the big guys, let them know kind of what to expect moving forward. But when it comes to when they come back here, Potvin has to know that those are the guys he needs to show up. And we talked about it at the Open. They just didn't. They weren't here tonight. It felt like we missed them a little bit. Doan said in the press conference, just a little bit of changes here and there, and you have to take advantage of the fact that you have the film to watch. Villalta said that as well. Villalta said, hey, we're going to look at the film. We're going to understand that we have to make some changes here, and once we do, we should be good to go for game 2 and ultimately game 3.
And Chase, I told you that too. I told you that before the game ended. I was like, this team is going to have a lot of film to look over before Friday's game.
No, absolutely. I think I think something we're not really touching on is that the Roadrunners were in this situation last year. They faced one of the best goaltenders in the AHL, if not the best goaltender in the AHL last year, in Joey Decord. And they took the Coachella Valley Firebirds all the way to game number 3 of that best-of-3 series. They've been in this situation before. They've faced off against one of the league's best goaltenders and a future NHL star in terms of goaltending. And I think, in terms of growth, your next step of growth is to beat that team. Last year, decent regular season, snuck into the playoffs, took one of the best teams in the AHL, best goaltenders, to 3 games. Now you have a great regular season. You're second seed. You need to take the Wranglers all the way to game 3 now and beat them. That's called going into your development, taking another step in your development. It's what the Coyotes have done. It's what multiple teams have done. Come on now. It's the process for every single team that wants to be competitive in their road to a championship. If the Roadrunners want to continue growing, they need to win games 2 and game 3.
And let's take a second to just talk about that. We're not Locked On Flames. We're not Locked On Wranglers, but let's look at them. You have a team in this building. They play here. They've played here. I don't even remember how long the AHL regular season. I think it's 72 games. 36 out of 72 games they played in this building. They were in their home room. That talent pool melted really well together this year. If you're Calgary, it is an ego thing. It is an ego thing, and I hope that it was an ego thing for them to be like, hey, a guy like Jordan Osterley, let's take it, NHL veteran, has been up and down all the way out through his career. He doesn't want to be in the AHL playoffs if he doesn't have to be. He'd rather be on the NHL roster. But when you have the skill and the talent in the team that you're playing, your goal is to shut that down, and they did exactly that tonight. Dustin Wolf was the star of the show, and really the youth of the Wranglers shined more than the youth of the Roadrunners.
Let's wrap up those thoughts and talk about what we want to see specifically from the Roadrunners ahead of Friday's game, and if they can make it if they can force Game 3, what we can hope to see then and beyond in the Calder Cup playoffs. We'll do that right after this. And today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. When you're drafting your fantasy team, do you ever wish you could handpick the best stars for your business team? If you're building your talent roster, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Don't spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills when you can do it all yourself with Indeed. Hate waiting? Indeed's U.S. data shows over 80% of Indeed's employers find quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job. Indeed knows that when you're growing your own business, you have to make every dollar count. That's why with Indeed, you only pay for quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. Visit Indeed.com/lockedon to start hiring now. That's Indeed.com/lockedon. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed. All right, let's wrap things up on this episode of Locked On Coyotes. Robyn Leano, James Mackey, and Chase Beardsley from the Tucson Convention Center here in Tucson, Arizona in round 1 of the Calder Cup playoffs on the Pacific Division side, which is absolutely crazy for this format. But let's talk about what Tucson now has to do. Their backs are against the wall. Something we didn't really we were hoping not to say for a 2 seed going in, but what do they need to do to get this back?
Me first? Okay, I'll go first. I think let's be straight up. You have to find a solution to Calgary's back check. Your forecheck has to come out and perform in game 2. You have to figure out how to get bodies to the net. You have to figure out how to best Dustin Wolf. If he's going to give you rebound chances, you have to find a way to break this Calgary team down to the point where you're pushing through fast enough that you can defeat them, get to where you need to be on those open ice situations, and get the puck back in the net. 2, communication needs to be big. There were a couple times, and there's one really memorable that I can think of, far side circle when they were in the middle of a change. It was a fast break into the zone. Unique thought Doan was trailing him, and Gunther was on the far side. He had just gotten the puck from Gunther. Unique did, and he drops the puck at the top of the circle, expecting Doan to continue chasing in. Doan stops. Doan grabs a change. Unique goes to the bench, throws his hands in the air, is trying to figure out what happened. But communication and finding out how to crack the back check and the pressure that Calgary gave them in the offensive zone tonight.
Look, I think those are all true things, and I think those are all things you need to work on. But I think the simplest, most simplistic answer to this: beat Dustin Wolf. Find a way to beat Dustin Wolf. That was their main problem. Communication was a problem. All that what you said, James, main problems, but the absolute central problem, beating Dustin Wolf. And what you need to do that is get your stars going. Look, I've already said multiple times the show, Dylan Gunther, I thought he had a decent game. Josh Doan, could be better. Connor Geekie, hopefully, this was a learning experience and this was a good stepping stone to his next game. Get your star players going, beat Dustin Wolf. That's all. That's really all you have to do. I thought a lot of the things that they did today were pretty decent. I thought their defense was really good. I thought Matt Vialta was pretty good. Penalty kill was really good. It's just beat Dustin Wolf. And what you have to do is jumpstart your offense, the power play, your star players.
Yeah, get that offense firing in all cylinders like it was at the beginning of the season. Because and you brought it up earlier, perfect, and one of you brought it up perfectly. Beginning of this season, Doan and Gunther were the fuel of that team. They were the top 2 players for the Tucson Roadrunners, and it showed. If you ever watched any of those games, if you look at them, if you look at the film from those games, they were a force. They surely were. It breaks up because they're because they move up to a different role. Make sure that they find that role once again. What they did at the start of the season. Am I expecting it to be the exact same? No, that's maybe asking a little bit too much. But at least find the groove again between those 2 players as they anchor the top of this team.
Yeah, get out of them what you need out of them, right? Like I talked about just a little bit ago. Take advantage of the fact you had guys up learning from great strength coaches. You had top-of-the-line trainers, top-of-the-line head coaching. They had opportunities. I'm sure there were a couple times we saw them go up the stairs at Mullet to go talk to GMBA after games. They had an opportunity to touch base with the big guys up there. You need to hope that if you're Steve Potvin for game 2 and game 3, they bring that back into your clubhouse and they say, hey, here's what I learned up there. Here's how we can incorporate it into our game. Here's what I need from you guys to help us do that as a whole. It doesn't matter if they have an A or a C on their chest. There has to be a leader, period, point blank. It doesn't matter if they're an assistant or the captain of the squad. Find a leader within your room, maybe one of the guys who came down. Find a leader within your room to lead your team into the next 2.
70% of this team around that has been with the Arizona Coyotes this past season. They have the ability to win this. They just need to go out. They know what they need to do. Go out, win game 2. If not, it's even worse and it's even harder on these players because they know that this might be it in this arena.
One more thing I'll add to another thing is if they don't, mentioned it just earlier on this segment, you got to find a way to solve Dustin Wolf. If they don't do that within the first period, here's a huge key that they need to take care of: is they don't let that get to them. Don't get frustrated. You can see the frustration from them the moment they stepped off the ice. You sure as hell hope that they don't carry that specific frustration back to them when they get back on the ice come game 2 on Friday.
I don't even know whose helmet it was, but there was a helmet that went sliding across the concrete back there. I don't even remember whose it was, but you're right about that. They have to maintain their aggression and use it for a good instead of getting tied up in those scrums like we saw Calgary kind of start all night.
Yeah, I mean, you've been saying it, James. Everything's there. Defense, goaltending, physicality. I don't think we've touched on that much. The physicality was there. There were a lot of good hits today. Penalty kill, that was there. Two things. Well, one thing actually. Offense. Solving Dustin Wolf. That's really it.
Put it all together. You got a perfect little PB&J. Look at that.
At the TCC. The big TCC.
Yes, sir. PBJ at the TCC.
Well, any final thoughts before we wrap things up?
Yeah, I just wish I had a sports betting partner like FanDuel to help me bet on the NHL playoffs, Robyn. Throwback to last episode when you and I talked about that. That was fun. Either way, the playoffs have been great. A lot of action all the way up and down the AHL, a lot of action all the way up and down the NHL. I am pumped for the run to the end of the Calder and the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Were you giving like an ad run there? What the heck?
No, I just remembered I was sitting there and I was listening to Robyn kill the read, by the way, for FanDuel.
That's fair.
You killed the reads today, Monopoly Go and Indeed both. You absolutely killed them. It's like you do this, daily. It's kind of weird.
I know, right?
I'll say this massive positive, and I think that's all I have today. I think the huge positive today is that you saw TCC rocking. Yeah. Another example of why hockey belongs in Arizona.
Oh, yeah.
Why that was awesome. Could have been a little bit more filled. Obviously, yes. Yeah. But I think
it was loud.
The fans that were here were awesome. And they were loud and supportive. And love to see that in Tucson. I love to see all the little flyers, saying, we want to keep our team here. And I think that's a fair statement. I just love the environment that I saw here today.
There was a couple posters I saw that said, keep the Roadrunners here. The Roadrunners are Tucson's team. And then we were waiting for media postgame, and some lady walked out. She had a QR code on there, like a sign the petition, keep the Roadrunners in Tucson. So this town loves this team. It's just a matter of those above us who make the calls to hopefully keep everything the way it is and not ruin any communities that are tight-knit.
As someone that spent about 7 years in Tucson, even though most of those years there weren't any other minor league teams outside of the Tucson Roadrunners, I know firsthand, talking to these Tucson fans, that they don't want them to leave because to them it's just another minor league team once again leaving the city. They've already had the Toros, the Sidewinders, so many other teams just up and leave. They don't want it to happen again with the Tucson Roadrunners. And power to them. I'm the same way. Even though I live in the Phoenix metropolitan area, and even as much as I would love to be able to cover AHL hockey just down the road, this is Tucson's team.
Yeah, there's just something about this team here that feels right. And I think taking him away, we saw there was a guy in a luchador mask. And I don't know if you guys saw it. There's a guy in a luchador mask out here. This community is so different from that of what the Coyotes had up in Tempe because it's so close to Arizona at the end of the day. Yeah.
Plus, one more thing I'll add about that, with the culture. I'm not sure if you guys ever been to a game down here when they do their Hispanic Heritage Night. They really the Coyotes kind of do it a little bit with the Los Yotes and a lot of stuff like that. They did that. Yeah. But the Roadrunners, they really go into it. They have a mariachi in the breezeway. The mariachi will do this national anthem. They will have so much culture. It really rings what this Tucson is all about.
And we have the best vendor here. The donut vendor.
Donuts. Awesome. Guys, everyone who's listening to this, if you've been to Tucson Roadrunners, James right here does not like the donuts.
Mini donuts.
I didn't say I didn't like them. The words out of my mouth were, they weren't the best.
You're a hater.
Nope, not good enough.
Check out Robyn's Twitter poll.
I've got the Twitter poll. If you are a frequent goer to the Tucson Convention Center, the Tucson Roadrunners games, or even University of Arizona hockey games, because they have them there too. Put that vote in there.
can't win.
James is incorrect.
Look, we may not be able to agree on that, but there's one thing we can all agree on, correct?
Hockey belongs in the desert.
Yeah,
Hockey belongs in the desert.
absolutely.
Alrighty, well, that's going to be it for today's episode of Locked On Coyotes. If you like what you heard, don't forget to leave a review, like, comment, subscribe if you have yet to already. We're available everywhere you get your podcast, including on YouTube, Sirius XM, ad-free on Amazon Music. Don't forget to interact with us on social media. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/LockedOnCoyotes, on X at @LO_Coyotes. I'm personally at Robyn_Leano. James and Chase, where can our listeners find you guys and your work?
At James_Mackey 35 on X or Twitter, and then at J_Mackey Sports on Instagram.
At Chase Beardsley _ on Twitter /X, whatever you want to call it, and then also Chase Beardsley Sports on Instagram.
You can interact with us, ask us any question you might have. We might answer right back. We'll be here on Friday too, so maybe we'll talk some more Tucson Roadrunners hockey right back here on the Locked On Coyotes podcast. Well, thanks again, everyone, for listening to today's episode. Hope you guys staying safe out there. Hope you guys staying healthy. And don't forget to forever howl on.